For the sake of getting another film fight in this week, I'm just gonna chug this one down. No tons of pictures and no organizing my thoughts into segmented paragraphs. I'm just gonna talk. There will be spoilers only after a certain point. So there I was in the theater. The movie had just ended, and I was waiting for the mid and post-credit scenes. As I sat there in an awestruck crowd, something inside me felt empty. It was like I lost all feeling in my soul. The sensation was not what I expected. I mean, I thought it was a good movie. The casting was excellent. Tom Holland and Michael Keaton both owned their roles. There were a lot of good jokes and gags. There were great twists and turns in the story. The villain plot was pretty good, easily one of the MCU's best. Iron Man was used sparingly and didn't steal the movie like the trailer suggested. Everything seemed to come together pretty well, yet something didn't feel right. So I went on a long hero's journey to discover why this movie, with all these great things, didn't cut it for me. Then after seeing it a second time, it hit me. Let me use a metaphor to explain. A movie is a cake. Characters, a good story, and good pacing are the base. The actual cake part, if you will. Good action, a memorable soundtrack, and impact are like frosting. Spider-Man Homecoming is a cake and just a cake. But there was no frosting. None of the action was anything remotely noteworthy. The soundtrack wasn't memorable at all. And there was nothing that triggered an emotional response. The action was plain. You won't walk out of the theater remembering any scene in particular. None of it had any weight at all. There's nothing that even comes close to anything in the original movies, like the Goblin brutally pummeling Spider-Man, the Doc Ock train fight, or the finale in number 3. These scenes were intense, remarkable, and made you want to cheer your protagonist on. During the Marvel opening title was a fantastic remix of the iconic 60s theme song. I was extremely disappointed to find that it never came up in the actual movie. If it did, then the soundtrack could have rivaled even the Raimi films and added some emotion to the dull action. Almost no scene was impactful in any way. Maybe once I felt something of an emotional response. Nothing was sad, nothing was thrilling, nothing made me happy, and nothing made me want to get up and cheer. I can't say they didn't try on that last one though. Oh boy, did they try and completely miss the mark. Again, I have to say that I thought Homecoming was a good movie, just nothing remarkable. This was the first likable Peter in 13 years. The Vulture is one of the best MCU villains, and the story was pretty good. I'm glad we got a coming-of-age story without redoing the whole Uncle Ben thing. It's been done twice already, and you're never going to beat the original on that. Another thing I really liked was the small scale that this film had. The stakes were never on a global scale, just Queens. The Vulture didn't want to destroy the world or anything. He just sells alien hybrid weapons to criminals. Well, I say just. I like half of his motivation. It's very grounded and down to earth. Toombs sells weapons to provide for his family. Simple. Then there's the half I didn't like. He was driven into this because his crew lost the job to clean up New York after the events of the Avengers. He lost the contract to none other than Tony Stark. I'm sick and tired of the we create our own worst enemy story. It's just been done to death by the MCU already. Stark caused Whiplash, Ultron, and Zemo already. Now Vulture too. Okay, now for spoilers. I love the twist that the Vulture was Liz's dad. I did not see that one coming, and it led to the only scene that had any kind of emotion, intensity. There were a few things that reminded me of The Dark Knight Rises in Homecoming. That ending with Zendaya, oh goodness. It's the Robin bit all over again. After being a creepy stoner throughout the movie, she reveals that her name is Michelle and that her friends call her MJ. Oh brother, it was just so shoehorned in. It was pretty bad in Rises too, but at least it felt earned. John Blake, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, had an interesting relationship with Bruce Wayne and Batman. He also spent the climax trying to evacuate a bus of kids from Gotham, and it was implied at the end that he would pick up the mantle as Batman. So he was kind of a Robin. I just wish it wasn't spelled out for us. In Homecoming though, it wasn't earned. She had zero resemblance to any kind of MJ, or did or said anything at all that earned her that title. It's just there for the sake of surprising us with a Mary Jane. This definitely contributed to the emptiness I felt once the film was over, because it was one of the final impressions it left on me, and that impression was stupidity. So before I mention how Homecoming was a coming-of-age story, well, it kind of messes this up too. He didn't really grow as a character. The most is that at first he'd rather be an Avenger than go to school. Then he gives up his dream so he can continue what left he has of a normal life. Again, this isn't done well. It goes like this. Iron Man constantly tells Spidey to not go after the Vulture. Spidey keeps going after the Vulture. Then he wins in the end, proving to Iron Man that he does have what it takes to be an Avenger. Peter never had to change. He was right the whole time. It's Stark who needed to change. So he really didn't grow. Perhaps if the roles were reversed, this would have been better. What if Stark wanted Peter to help more, but Peter didn't know if he had what it took after being beaten by Captain America's team? He likes just going after small crimes, so he becomes more and more confident as the film progresses. I also previously mentioned how there was a scene that tried to have emotional weight. The part when he lifts the rubble on top of him. It has no emotional impact whatsoever because the rubble doesn't stand for anything. So when he lifts it, it's literally just him lifting rubble. If he was unconfident, then maybe it could have represented his lack of confidence. He lifts it off his shoulders to rise up and defeat the Vulture. But no, it's only rubble. Maybe they were trying to have it mean Stark's lack of faith in him, but it was never hindering Peter at any point. He kept going no matter what Stark thought. And if the soundtrack from the Marvel opening was used, then it might have had more weight, but sadly that just wasn't the case. Again, let's bring it back to a similar moment in The Dark Knight Rises, when Bruce climbs out of the pit. There are two reasons why this scene makes you want to get up and cheer. The first is that the pit can be a metaphor for Bruce's mental state too. Since the end of The Dark Knight, he was in a pit in life. He let his company collapse, he quit being Batman, he was beating himself up over Rachel's death, and his body deteriorated. Even when he donned the cowl again, he still wasn't complete. The Dark Knight didn't truly rise again until he climbed out of that pit. The other reason this scene worked was because of setup. We saw Bruce in the pit, other people trying to climb out of that pit, but failing, Bruce himself failing, and then Bruce learning the only way to make it out. He had to make a jump that was impossible with the safety rope. So Bruce had to make a jump without anything to save him from a deadly fall. So when he does the near impossible and climbs out of the physical and mental pit, it makes you want to cheer for your protagonist. Homecoming has neither setup or meaning. The other reason this scene worked was because of setup. I don't mean to rant about this one scene, but it's just an example of why I didn't love Homecoming. It lacked any emotion. Good, worth seeing, but not great.